Hi everyone, this is Pastor Brendan Hayes from Kalgoorlie Seventh-day Adventist Church again. The last time we spoke, we asked the question, does God exist? And we tried to come up with some rational arguments to suggest that perhaps he might. But now there's another question that follows logically after that. If God does exist, then what is he like? Now, imagine us here. If we accept that there is a higher being that placed us here, and in doing so granted us the ability to use our senses, to touch, to smell, to hear, and to see things, to experience this world. And then on the other hand, we have God, who is this higher being, this greater being that exists outside of time and space, is eternal, immaterial, and all-powerful. Now, because of our limitations, we struggle to know what he's like. We can't experience him in the same way that we experience our natural surroundings. So, in our human weakness, a lot of the time, what we do is we limit who God is. And we often do it almost to a single attribute. So, for example, some people seem to think of God as this wish-granting genie type of figure. Others liken him to a strict authoritarian. Some people think of him as some distant deity who is uninterested in who we are or what we do. Now in Hebrews chapter 1, it says this: in the past God spoke to our ancestors through the prophets at many times and in various ways. But in these last days he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, and through whom he also made the universe. The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word. So it starts off by saying God spoke to the prophets, men and women who were the mouthpieces of God, warning and guiding and leading. And not just God's people, but also all the people of the known world. From many of the words that we have from their mouths, we have the Bible, which describe God through historical narrative, the wisdom literature, poetry, even the books of prophecy themselves, the Gospels in the New Testament. And as well, from that, we also have letters of the disciples of Jesus later on. So the Gospels declare the words and the acts of Jesus, his sermons, his parables, and through his works, many miracles of healing. So these all point us towards Jesus as well. And deeper still is the fact that Jesus was the very embodiment of the Heavenly Father. Whoever had seen him had seen the Father. So when you consider the response of religious leaders and the Pharisees, it was clear at the time when Jesus was there, they'd lost perspective as to who God was. There hadn't been a prophet who had spoken words for 400 years. And so there was this silence that was in the environment they were in. So when Jesus came along, they immediately rejected him because they didn't think God would act in the same way that he acted. God wouldn't eat with prostitutes or talk with a Samaritan woman or give himself over to be killed. But actually, Jesus did those things. That was who God was, a God who actively sought people who needed him, a God who would pay the price for a lost humanity himself with absolute love and grace. Now, some people have said, well, maybe Jesus was real and he did come to this earth, but he wasn't God. He was just some kind of great moral teacher. He was wise, he showed great love, but all in all, he was just human. Now, C.S. Lewis, the brilliant and once skeptical Cambridge University professor, was eventually won over by the evidence for Jesus, and he had a very clear conclusion about Jesus and that particular viewpoint. He said this: I'm trying here to prevent anyone from saying the really foolish thing that people often say about him. I'm ready to accept Jesus as a great moral teacher, but I don't accept his claim to be God. That is one thing we must not say. A man who was merely a man and said the sort of thing that Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher. You must make your choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or a madman, or something worse. You can shut him up for a fool, you can fall at his feet, or call him Lord. So we as humans are limited. So how can we know a limitless God? The truth is we can't, at least not on our own. And thankfully, we don't have to. God has revealed himself. We have the words of the prophets recorded in his word. And it's the story of a broken humanity and the lengths that God will go to save his people. We have Jesus himself. He is the Word made flesh, giving up his divine nature, becoming a man, dying so that we might live. His sacrifice on the cross is the greatest moment we have that defines his character. This is a God of goodness, mercy, and love. Now, we may not have all the answers of life, but as I think to know how God has revealed himself, it pushes me to seek him more, to know the full story of what he's done in his great love for us. And that's the journey that we're on. The journey that we're on is not about having all the answers, but looking for them and finding them together. So I hope you'll continue with me on that journey. I mean, we're not always going to have all the answers at hand, but as we search more and more, we'll find out some more things that may surprise us. So we'll be back with more questions and more hopeful answers at another time. But in the meantime, thank you for listening. And as I said before, let's keep praying until the building shakes, Acts 4:31, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.